Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the video, welcome to my garage. In today's video, we're going to be installing bump stops on the rear suspension of Wratchet. Now, before this video started, you just watched me making these Delrin bump stops for the bump stops. And the reason I did that is these are the bump stops that they come with, and they're round. But on Wratchet here, I've decided I'm going to have the bump stops hit on the upper link here, and I definitely did not want a round bump stop pad hitting a round tube, because that would just basically exert a sideways force onto the bump stop shafts, and I didn't want that. So I machined these bump stop pads that actually have a flat spot in the middle, so that when I have them lined up properly on top of this round shaft, then it's actually going to be a flat surface hitting a round surface, and that shouldn't be as bad. And then the other part you saw me making was this little aluminum collar. The collar is just a spacer. You can see I did the same thing on the front bump stops. It's just a spacer that pushes the bump stop out from the sleeve a little bit, and it just makes it, because once these are welded up in place, obviously you don't have any options if you decide you want your bump to compress a little bit more. So this is a 1/2 inch thick, and it just allows me so that if I decide maybe I want a 1/4 inch, I could make this a 1/4 inch. If I wanted it a 1/2 inch, I could take this out and move the bump stock up 1/2 inch, Or if I decided I need to push the bump stop out farther, I could make a bigger one of these or stack these up or what have you. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, why the hell would he install his bump stops on that upper link? That does not seem like the best place to put it. And to a certain degree, I'm agreeing with you, but let me tell you how I came to that conclusion. The way I saw it, there was 3 places to put the bump stops. One spot would be right here, which would be pretty good. The other spot would be over here, which would also be pretty good. Then there was the upper link, which honestly out of the 3 is the worst location. Some people like to put their bump stops on the top of the spindles, but my wheels have such an offset that that's not possible. The tire and the wheel are still covering this portion, so none of that was an option. Now, putting the bump stops here on either side, strength-wise, is really good. But the problem I ran into is there would have been so much work involved in supporting that canister all the way out here. I'd have to run, a tube down here that would come in and tie into the can, another tube that would go out here, and then I guess I'd have to run a tube that came out here. It would have to steer clear of the coil carrier. It would have to come out, and it would have to tie into here, and it would just be a whole mess. And I basically had the same situation over here. I would have the can here. I would again have to run up parallel here. Then I would have to run up into here. And I don't even think I'd have an option for anything over here because there is going to be a sway bar that comes somewhere around here. So this real estate is already spoken for. So although these positions would have been the strongest, they just didn't seem possible in order to get a canister up in there. Now if you look here, I've already got some of this mocked up. With this setup, the canister will be somewhere around here. It's got a shorty little piece here, and it'll have additional bracing that comes down here. And it'll basically sit between the bypass and the coil carrier. It'll be nestled up in there. You won't even see that much of it because the quarter panel goes on here, so it'll essentially be hidden, which is pretty nice. The only downside is it's going to contact this upper link, which number 1 is round, so that's not the greatest thing in the world. Number 2, as it is right now, probably is not strong enough to take that kind of impact. However, once I get the bump stop mounted up in there, I actually do have a lot of options with this upper link. Number 1, I can always make this out of, let's say, quarter wall chrome moly. So I can always make it as strong as it needs to be. I can also, if I want to, I could make it out of like square stock, and I could make a different connection here so that it cannot rotate at all. Then it could have a little pad where the bump stop comes into contact. So once I put the bump stop there, which I'm going to do, we're going to do that in this video. If I decide I need to strengthen this, I actually have quite a few options there, whereas the only option with these 2 locations is just to put it down there and then figure out the rest. So I decided to put the can up here because that'll be nice and clean, and then I'll deal with this as I need to, knowing that I will have multiple options I can work with there. First and foremost, as you can see, I took the roof and I unbolted it and slid it forward a little bit, and I took off the rear quarter. Now, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I am going to say that now that just this chassis has fiberglass panels, and when I need to work on something like this, being able to just unbolt the quarter panels and just kind of take them off or slide them out of the way, and then all of a sudden have all this access is really, really nice. So what we've got going on here is I've already done a little bit of the math on this beforehand. This bump stop can is mocked into position right now, and if you look, it is not 90 degrees with that upper link. It's more, and the reason for that is the bump stops I'm using have 4 inches of travel, and if you look at this upper link, when this upper link travels the equivalent of 4 inches of travel from the bump stop, its angle is changing because the upper link is traveling in an arc and the bump stop is traveling linear or in a straight line. The 2 are going to change. So what I did is the first time I mocked this up, this is mocked up at the same depth of the bump stop if it was completely compressed. So if you took this compressed bump stop and slid it into the sleeve there, it would be in contact with the upper link. So this represents a bump stop in there fully compressed. Then what I did is, using the jack here, I lowered the suspension until this upper link was 4 inches away from that position. That told me where the upper link will initially come in contact with the bump stop because it's got 4 inches of travel. And what I did at that point is I measured the angle. So I knew that I had started this at 90 degrees. It's not at 90 now, but when I did my initial calculation, this was propped at 90 degrees. Then I brought it down 4 inches, and then I measured the angle. And when it started at 90, went down 4 inches, it was 14 degrees. There's actually a 14-degree difference, more than you would think. So that told me that from start to finish, the angle was going to change 14 degrees. And if I installed the bump stop up here at 90 degrees, that would mean that this upper link would come into contact with a fully extended bump stop at 14 degrees. And if you pretend that this is the upper link, 14 degrees is like that. And you can imagine how much sideways force that would exert on the bump stop. And then as it compressed, it would go 90 degrees. And you don't want that. You don't want, you want to make the initial impact as soft as you can. So what I did is I took that 14 degrees and I split it in half, basically assuming that in the middle of my travel, which is 2 inches, I would be at 90 degrees, and then I would eat up 7 degrees going to full compression of the bump stop, and I would eat up 7 degrees going to full extension of the bump stop. And that would essentially make the impact as little as possible at both ends of the spectrum. So that brings me to where we are right now. Assuming that I'm going to make my ground zero at 2 inches of, you could say mid-travel, 2 inches of compression or 2 inches of extension. Right in the middle of the 4-inch travel is going to be my 90, which means if I'm 7 degrees on the top, this needs to be 97 degrees. And this is set to 97 degrees. And you probably won't be able to see that, but that is in place right now at 97 degrees. So this is close to where I want it, but that's not accurate enough for me to weld this in there solid. So what I did is I made another jig right here, and what this is, this represents the bump stop if it was in here and 2 inches extended. So this represents where the bump stop can or sleeve would be if the bump stop was extended 2 inches. And then this piece is 90 degrees because that's where I want it to be. So what I'm going to do is, using this as my baseline, because I need to know where to start with, I'm going to lower the suspension so that this is 2 inches down from where it is right now, and that'll basically put the suspension where it needs to be at mid-travel of the bump stop. Once I'm at that point, I'll take all this stuff out and I'll prop this into position. Alright, now I got that T-piece clamped onto the upper link. I've extended it 2 inches, so this is at the bump stops mid travel. So this piece is holding the bump stop canister 90 degrees to the upper link right now. And I've got a couple magnets on here holding this little piece in place. And I have done my best. I've tried to square it with an actual square, but that's been very, very difficult. So I've basically tried to just eyeball it and make sure that this is running up 90, that it's parallel with the bypass and the coil carrier. Kind of hard to tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a couple of nice tacks on here so that I can actually take everything off, put a bump stop in there, and actually extend it all the way out, and then actually cycle the suspension and make sure that everything comes and hits in line. Alright, now I got this tacked into place, and I do have the bump stop bolted in there. Looks to be in line pretty good with the link, and looks to be pretty parallel with the shocks. So let's cycle it from full extension here all the way in and make sure that it stays in line with the link. Okay, so the alignment in line with the link looked really good. I'm totally happy with that. Now I've got it set up so that this is fully extended. We got our 4 inches right here, and you can see it's coming into contact with the upper link, and it should be, this should be around 7 degrees. I don't know. I can't really read these things. That probably looks like 8. Maybe, but you know what? If it's 8 and it was supposed to be 7, I'm okay with that. So, right now we're at full extension. So let's bring it to halfway, and hopefully at halfway it should be pretty much 90 degrees to the upper link. Again, this isn't ideal. I'm not in love with where this makes contact with the upper link. But you guys know how on my design here, I do always forfeit a little tiny bit of functionality over just the way it looks. And that's basically what I'm doing here. We all know this would be a little bit better if it was closer out to the spindle, but then I would have all sorts of infrastructure getting the bump stop out there. So I'm at 2 inches right now, so I'm mid-stroke. It does look like it's pretty much 90 degrees. And it is 90 degrees. It's right on 90 degrees, which it should be because I made quite a jig setting it up there. So now if we continue and eat up those additional 2 inches, it starts to rotate back the other way. And when we get to full compression, which is right there, then it should be 7 degrees the other way. And again, it looks like it's 8. I don't know, maybe there's 16 degrees total instead of 14, but either way, the fact that it hits 90 in the middle and then goes 7 or 8 degrees this way, 7 or 8 degrees that way, that's the goal that I was looking for, so I'll call that a win. So now I'm good with the setup of all that. I'm happy with how straight it is this way, and I'm happy with the angle that I got this way. However, obviously we can't leave that just with that little tiny piece. So I'm going to cut a little piece to kick this way and another little piece to kick up this way so that I can tie the bump stop into this bar as well as this bar, because if I just left it on this bar, it would just twist that. It wouldn't even take much of a hit to twist that. So I need to tie into this bar as well. Okay, now I've cut this piece and this piece to help support the top of this. They come in there. This guy kicks way up there. This guy just kicks over there. When, you know, I didn't show too much of this. I showed the notching and the cutting. When I make pieces that are this tiny, what I did is I put it in the notcher and I could notch one end, but then once you cut it, it's so short. For me, I just do the rest of this with a grinder. So I just kept coming back here, grind it, see how it fits, grind it, see how it fits, and basically just slowly bring it up to where you want it. That's the same thing I did this one. I think I notched that end, but then this end was so extreme, it was greater than a 45-degree angle. So same deal. I just kept grinding it, bringing it in, grinding it, bringing it in until I had it pretty good there, and that's it. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. If the second half of this video feels a little bit rushed, that's because right now it's like 5 degrees outside, and although I've got my electric heater in this garage, it does not keep up with the garage. So the garage is really, really cold. So I think I was a little bit rushed to get as much of this done as I could. But regardless, I think I caught most of it. Especially, I'm hoping that I explained to you guys how I had to kind of split the difference on the angles and stress, or at least let you know that I am a little bit concerned that this is going to be strong enough, but I think moving forward, if I need to redesign this upper link so that it's a little bit beefier, I think that'll be good, because aside from that, I'm happy with the angle that I got this at, and I'm happy with where it is. It's such a clean install. It's going to allow me all this room over here for the sway bar, so this will work really well. And remember, I'm always balancing performance with aesthetics to a certain extent. Not that this thing's a turd, because everything I do, I'm worried about how it looks. But I didn't want a bump stop all the way out here with all sorts of infrastructure, you know, supporting it. Plus, I'm going to have a limit strap over here. So technically, having the bump stop over here wouldn't have really worked. And over here, it would have been in trouble with the sway bar. So to a certain degree, this is kind of where it had to go. But regardless, I'm happy with it. I really like the way it turned out. I think this will be good. I might need to address the upper link, but, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Oh, look at that. It's so cold, I can see my breath in here. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope it's helping you with whatever you're working on, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.